Good morning, friends. This is Carol Jeanette, Interim Pastor at Lord of Life Lutheran Church in Kenosha, Wisconsin. I hope you're doing well. It continues to be challenging, but please know that you're in my thoughts and prayers. I'm actually recording this on Tuesday, but I worked on it much of the day yesterday. I'm discovering that writing on Mondays, or putting this together on Mondays, is kind of challenging. Maybe too much weekend gets in the way. Not in the sense of partying, but more of the idea that on weekends I focus on other things a little bit more. But then on Monday morning, it's like reality hits again and I need to sort it out in my head, which takes a while. Now, and I'm not complaining, I'm just trying to understand. Anyway, yesterday morning, there I was, sitting at my desk with lots of thoughts going through my head. I was trying to pull some of them together, some that I think are significant, but it was challenging. So once again, I was distracted by the trash truck trying to navigate our little cul-de-sac, which was made even more fun by the presence of the FedEx truck. And I was distracted in a good way by the financial report that our treasurer Claudia had just sent out, which says that the congregation is in good shape financially, thanks to your faithfulness and generosity. But as we enter yet another week of this social, physical distancing, and I think we're now in week 8, I'm increasingly aware of the massive variations in people's situations and experiences of this virus. Let me try to explain. John and I, and now Mark, are living in a comfortable house at the end of a cul-de-sac. There's a memory care facility behind us that is no longer allowing visitors, so the traffic for that place has decreased to just staff members, and that's sad, but it makes it even quieter for us. The Dominican convent on the other side of the memory care facility, attached to it, I would imagine has always been a fairly quiet place. And the retreat center on the other side of the convent, also attached to it, has been shut down. So it's very quiet. Now, because these facilities have a wonderful pathway by Lake Michigan, on a nice day, the walkers and bicyclists are out. But here in our house on the cul-de-sac, life is pretty quiet. So far, we haven't been ill. So far, there's not been a significant financial impact as a result of the crisis. The biggest impact on us has been having to stay at home in an abundance of caution, as people say. We miss having breakfast at the diner or dinner at the Mosquito Inn or a pub in town. I miss being at church and with people. I think I'm more effective in my work and ministry when I'm actually with people. But in reality, we're able to do our work from home in one way or another. And I would say that the worst thing for us is inconvenience. And if your response to that is something like, "Oh, poor you," dripping with sarcasm, I'd say you're entirely justified. Now, there are other people and families who are similar to us who are able to stay home without a lot of worry or too awfully much change. Some might be retired. Others might be working at home. Some might be spending precious time with children. Some are able to whittle down their honey-do lists. Now, for myself and for these folks, I'm grateful. Now, to be clear, I don't think that folks who are having it easier at this point are blessed by God, and others God doesn't bless. I don't think that's the way God works. But I am grateful, and I'm aware that because we are less impacted, we're in better position to help our neighbors. But other people's situations are very different. Many are much more stressful. There are parents who are homeschooling when that's not something that they really are good at. No value judgments here, just trying to describe what's happening. There are parents who are homeschooling and trying to simultaneously work at home. There are some who are stuck at home alone. Some stuck at home alone and they don't have the benefit of technology, so they're very isolated. There's some stuck at home who have been furloughed and wonder how they're going to pay rent or pay for groceries. There's some who have been furloughed and now worry about whether or not their jobs are going to exist even once things reopen. And the owners of small businesses that employ many of these folks wonder whether or not they're going to lose their business completely, how they're going to live in the future. There are people who could work in essential services, but won't because they're afraid to risk exposure to the virus for themselves and their loved ones. There are people who are working in essential services and do risk exposure to the virus. And my guess is that each day they come home worried about whether or not they have it and whether or not they're going to be passing this around. There are still other people who at this point are saying, enough of this, I'm going to go out and do what I need to do, and if I get the virus, I get the virus. It's time to get things open because the virus is messing up too many things right now. And in response to that, other people say, are you crazy? Do you know your grandmother could die from this if you bring it home to her? And in various places around the country that are reopening but requiring masks, there's violence. There's even violence with firearms that has resulted in death. And then there are the warnings from the United Nations that the coronavirus pandemic will cause global famines of biblical proportions. I look out my window at a quiet street, and although my life is pretty stable, it's easy for me to feel overwhelmed. There's so much going on. There's so many variations and experiences and interpretations and responses to this that it's really hard to know what to think. I find it easy to feel very anxious. Our lives, all of our lives, are changing and will be changed because of this pandemic, and no one knows what it's going to look like. I worry about the world now, but I also worry about the world that my grandchildren are growing up in. There are some scenarios that are very frightening. I find it very easy to feel helpless. I wonder what I can do that's going to make any difference at all. I mean, this isn't just about me, it's about the community and the country and the world. And how do I, one person, make a difference? How do we, people of faith, make a difference? Now, all of this stuff together is a perfect setup for developing really significant clinical disorders, depression, anxiety, or maybe just check out altogether. I mean, I can escape into my secluded house and ignore everything. But as much as I can, I want to avoid taking those paths. So what I'm going to do is kind of write a note to myself, things that I need to keep in mind. And you are welcome to borrow or not, whatever is helpful. So, note to self, note to Carol. First, Carol, remember the fruits of the Spirit, the ones that Paul wrote in his letter to the Galatians. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. You may not be able to influence how this whole thing plays out in the world in a big way, or in our country, or even in the community, although I do hope you have a little influence in the congregation. But your response is still crucial. Carol, if you respond with the fruits of the Spirit rather than what Paul called the fruits or the works of the flesh, you're doing what you can. It's easy to see. Love, joy, peace, patience, all of these over enmities, strife, jealousy, anger, quarrels, factions. It's easy to see. Focus on living out of the fruits of the Spirit. It has to be better. Number 2 in note to self, Carol. Remember the song, "Have no fear, little flock, have no fear, little flock, for the Father has chosen to give you the kingdom. Have no fear, little flock." This is actually from the 12th chapter of the Gospel of Luke. Okay, the reality, Carol, is that if you have no fear at all, no anxiety at all, you're probably dead. Anxiety is part of life and it's necessary for survival. But the flip side of that is that too much fear and too much anxiety is also a killer. In this passage, Jesus was preparing his followers to follow him. That wasn't an easy road, and it's not an easy road now. It's a challenging road. Anxiety is part of life. It's what you do with it that is important. Maybe take a lesson from sheep, from that flock. They're very social animals. They flock together, and when one sheep moves, the rest will follow, even if it's not a good idea. So maybe, Carol, fear not for you translates to don't react automatically. Just because everyone else is going crazy or getting upset or forgetting how to think doesn't mean you have to. Return to number 1, the fruits of the Spirit, and repeat. And never forget, the Father has chosen to give you the kingdom. You may not know exactly what that means, but trust it. One more thought in this note to self, Carol. Challenge is part of life. If there's no challenge, there's no real growth, no maturing process. If you seek only comfort or escape, you will not be able to rise to meet these new challenges. Taking care of yourself is important, but whatever the new normal is going to be, it's going to require faithful and creative responses and leadership. Responding to challenge is challenging. It's not comfortable. So when Mondays come, as long as you're putting together these contemplations, at least push it through and don't give up. This is a response to the challenges of life right now. And if you don't finish it until Tuesday, that's okay too. My friends, stay well. In the challenges that you face, trust in God's presence and God's help. God's peace and strength and hope be with you.